If you would introduce yourself.
So I'm Jennyfer Peterson, Jennyfer Peterson, and I've been here since about 2013, 2014, since we were at the old building. This is Nova Labs 2.0.
All right. And when did you move?
We moved at about 2015,
And
August 2015.
was that due to loss of space or
No, well,
did
yes,
you outgrow it?
yes and no, all of the above. So we were actually walking distance, a couple of blocks over. Right now, within a couple of months, within a month they had raised the place. So actually, a couple of guys knew the landlord, the owner of the. It was a storage space. And that's really the thing. I mean, somebody gave us a chance in their facility, but then when the founders, the 12 founders, moved to a new facility, it's all about, somebody knowing somebody. So they cut a deal where they would get one of the storage spaces, and they would restore it. This group of guys just happened to have all of the skills, that fit like a puzzle. So one guy knew something, the other guy knew something, and it just kind of fit. And we had a couple of people who were pretty well connected and very social. So they got us that space, and I wasn't there at the time. I came in a couple of years later, but it was pretty crappy. But when you have skills, you can make it all right. People co-located. We started with a lot of things. This is a mistake that small businesses make all the time is they start spending money. No, they started with donated stuff. So there's a concept here called co-location, and to this day many pieces of our equipment are co-located instead of owned. We're just growing out of that, and there's no rush because there's retired people and stuff like that. They're looking for some place, so you just kind of deal with them. You can use their equipment. Their equipment has a place to go. They don't have to pay for storage. So that's how it started out. So very quickly, they grew into two of those storage units. The ones I mean, or they're deep.
Mhm.
And so that gave them 3,200 square feet. So they doubled in size in a year. So that's 2011 and 2013. And then they pretty much very rapidly outgrew that space. When you're in Reston, you don't even need to advertise that something cool is going on. And this was tucked way in the back, right, in a crappy area. And still, just between meetup and just word of mouth. And to this day, word of mouth is what we use. We do not advertise at all. And we are hopping with people here. So
How many basic level members do you have?
We have a lot of churn. So, but it flirts with 300. But that churn, we're not good at statistics yet, and so I'm pushing for that. You shouldn't make decisions based on assumptions. You should make decisions based on actual numbers that you can see. We're growing fast, but we're losing people equally fast, and we grow just enough to be in the black, and that's not really necessary, but I think we're getting there, to where we're understanding that the head people are understanding that, and so they're starting to reorganize to where they're taking statistics more seriously. But anyway, so we moved over here. It's just been a couple of years. We immediately filled the space out, and this is 10,500 square feet. And in order to bring something in here, we have to move three things. We are very elastic, and so we reshape based on who uses the space. That's one of the things I really love about this place is how we reshape. It's very dynamic, and it's very spontaneous how it's done. It's not driven from the top. It's driven from the makers. There's definitely, a directorship, and they control things, yes, or they could, but they don't. members, even though they don't have a vote or anything, they're allowed to run this space. And decide where things go and how things get organized. And if someone comes to the door and says, I have a building full of equipment, I don't have to contact the board. We can say yes together. I just go dig up the mics and the Patricks and we decide together. And that it's very empowering to know that, we are doing this together.
It sounds very complicated. How does that work?
It seems complicated from the outside in, and this is something we struggle with. This is one of the reasons I was appointed, is the idea that you land on one person was not there before. And the people who were here before still struggle with that. Everybody, when you walk through that door, the first person you see can give you a tour, can tell you about the place. And that's what happens day to day here. So there's no need for a day-to-day manager, and we've gotten away without it for a long time. Because the key members, the $100 level members, have really what they get besides the key to the front door is ownership of the space. And that has worked pretty well so far. Is it scalable? It's looking like maybe not, but we'll find out together.
And can you tell me a little bit more about the levels of members that they have in a space like
Okay,
this?
so they have, there's 2 levels of members, but there's 4 levels of participation, right? And I think that's really important. I'm probably the only person who will put it that way. But there's actually 4 levels of participation levels. There's 2 that's free. One of those is like a guest here. Most of the people here right now that you see are guests. And we really, if you look at our mission statement, you'll see that in there, serving the external community and not making membership a requirement to do some things here, to do everything here. That's really important to us. So that level, we have a third of our things here are free and open to the public. And then you have the attendees. The attendees, you have to go to a class called Green Orientation and learn about our code of conduct, about our culture, about the community, some of the rules and processes and stuff. That's new. We would hardly tell you hello when you signed up for a $50 membership here. There would be no acknowledgement that you just started paying $50. Some people tell me, one of the people on the board of directors now told me that it took him almost 6 months before somebody explained how that works to him. He was paying for 6 months. And that was pretty typical, right? And it still happens. Because on our website, you can self-enroll for $50. You don't get any note. You get a receipt. But we don't tell you, hey, you should come in, because the community is here. It's not online. So, and then we have the $100 level. So the $50 level actually gets you an access token. You can go in and out the shop door. But beyond that, you're really no different from an attendee. So an attendee can get access to the door by paying $15 every time he comes in. But so that kind of temporarily elevates you. And you can use any tool that you are trained on. Right? So some of our tools are green. You only have to go and then you can use them. Some of them are yellow. You have to have a training class, and some are red, and you have to have another training class. And so attendees and associates can do it that way. It's just the associates can have independent access to all over the space, and the attendees need to have a day pass for that. And then at the $100 level, you just have access 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It comes with strings attached.
All right, and what do you think were some of the biggest hurdles this space had to overcome to get where you are today?
Or let me say the $100 level, you've got to be sponsored in. You can't enroll for that. You have to get to know people in the community, pick a sponsor, and then that person has to vouch for you to the board. Some of the challenges with setting up, I will let one of the founders do that. But what I have observed is, and I study other maker spaces constantly to see how we're doing, get ideas, get policy ideas, process ideas. And from what I see, so one week I did founder tracking. What happened to the founders? Because something happened to our founders, right? So there seems to be always a split. So when you get together, all 12 of you have a common belief about what you want to do, and then there seems to be a split where you have to decide this way or that way. So that happened a couple of years ago. It was pretty nasty. I witnessed it, and so there was that split, and between should we be not for profit, should we be for profit, should we have some kind of mix of the two, what do we get out of it? But most of the founders were like, nothing, we just want to be a part of something big, and we want this to work, and some people wanted some kind of a profit from it. And so that idea of the structure of the space split some people up, and the unstructured nature is the result of that kind of. It turns out you can't have an unstructured organization. Not as you grow. You do need policies. We just got those last year. They're very little. It's 80% structure, 80% unstructured, 20% policy, right? Mostly on our system. Right? So if I put a jar and I tell people to pay for something, I expect that people will pay, and that's kind of the mindset of the space. If we put a note saying, hey, when you use this, you have to put money in the kitty, we kind of expect there will be money in the kitty. I don't know if that will scale. So I would think the challenge, so that's the challenge is how much structure do you need and how much freedom do you need? As you can see on the internet, when you start discussing something in a group, the larger the group, the worse it gets, the faster it gets worse, right? And within 5 comments on the internet, the conversation is completely untenable. So, the challenge is how do you have discussions that are respectful and on topic? Well, you get a little bit of structure in your meetings is what you do, right? You've got to have a little bit of structure in your meetings. People chafed at that, but more people are coming to the meetings now, because it turns out the very people who were ruined in the meetings want the meetings to work better. The irony of that, right? So people like when a meeting is more positive and it's accomplishing something. So that was nice, because the member meetings are a community building thing. The other thing is, how do you get the community to kind of like stay together and do things together and contribute, right? It's AVO, all volunteer organization. So if the bandsaw is broken or the 3D printer is broken, I've come in here, we had 5 3D printers and every single one of them was broken, right? So whose job is that to fix it? And if you fix that, like you fix it because you want to use it, and that was the mindset before. But as we grew, now you have to fix it so everybody can use it. So it's kind of like a job now, and the more a volunteer position heads towards a job, the more you lose that volunteer. You see what I'm saying? And then people come in very inconsistently, even if you make them a steward, right? No one person is here all the time. So that's one of the things I had to fill, was somebody who's here all the time, right? So it's pretty much going to a second job. Luckily, I can work out of here, I found. Yeah, those were some of the challenges there, is the idea of how to balance structure and unstructure, because you've probably figured out by now that makers are very unstructured people, and they chafe whenever you set up a rule. I put a sign up, or I send an email out saying we're going to clean up this area. Me and my minions are going to clean up this member cage. because you're not allowed to try and take somebody's head off in the member cage. So I'm going to take all those dangerous things out, all the icky gooey stuff that got on my fingers, all of that stuff needs to go. And then 6 months later, I hear, you never said that. Well, yes, I did. I put it in writing in 3 places. I didn't hear that. Do you check your emails when they come from No. Do you read the wiki? No. Do you read the Slack? No, that's all too much stuff for me. How am I supposed to communicate with you then? See, so there's no responsibility for them to check it, to read anything, and yet they want to have a say, right? So it's an interesting thing where you want to maintain that creative freedom. So how much structure do you overlay on top of that? Right? We're about to put a bulletin board up with all the stewards. Okay, I was late one day and somebody decided to do green, and I came in just in time for him to say, this organization is very flat. No, it's not. It's not flat. So the word wasn't getting out that we were creating a structure. So bulletin board, everybody can see this is who you go to when you need help here. That's always been there, but it wasn't communicated. And even if you do communicate it, you still have a large portion of the people here who didn't get the word, and that's true in everything. Most of the complaints of confusion is because there's no one way to communicate with people. Unlike at work, I have to read my email. I can't go and say, hey, I don't know what's going on when my boss sent me emails and I didn't read them, right? Here, this is not your job, so how do you mandate that people keep up with policies and procedures? So the very thing that's positive is also a challenge, right? Yeah.
All right, and I think that's a lot of really, really good content. I really appreciate that.
You're welcome.
If there's anything else you think that needs to be said, anything else you want to communicate with other makerspaces about, or anything you're curious about hearing about other makerspaces as they go to other ones?
Well, I'm always curious about the community building events at other places, because that's always a challenge here. It's like you can't do the same event more than maybe twice. It doesn't work because it's been done, I guess. And so it's always a challenge to figure out, how do you keep people together in terms of having an event in a different format that will get them together. I hear that as I look around and talk to people, that seems to be the big challenge. It'd be nice if one day the maker spaces had a way of doing that kind of brain exchange of ideas. I don't know what that would look like, but problems that people have solved. There's a lot of problems that maker spaces have not solved yet. How to get people beyond 101 is a huge challenge. I don't know if they had that national makerspace.
Nation of Makers?
Mm-hmm. That produced a list of challenges that needed to be solved by the maker movement for maker spaces. That was a very interesting list. I looked down there, I was like, oh, that one. Because, then I went, well, where are the solutions? There never was any. But it was validating to see it was the same ones we were having, So I was like, see, I'm not doing anything wrong. Or we're not doing anything wrong.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
So I think, unless there's anything else you wanted to offer, I'll cut it there.